actually. So what I'm going to do is to present proof systems. I'm going to explain what proof systems are, and to relate them via semantics somehow, okay? So I'll start with classical logic, because mathematicians know everything about classical logic, although they don't know that they know about it. So when you want to prove a theorem, and you have a conclusion B or something that you want to prove B, and you have a hypothesis A, what you do is, actually you have at least, well, we have three ways of doing that. Either you present a proof, a direct proof, you construct a proof from A to B, or you can show that A follows from B by assuming not B and then proving not A. This is known as contraposition. Or you can use contradiction. That is, you're going to assume your hypothesis and you're going to negate your conclusion, and then you get to a contradiction, right? So the question I ask to my students when I'm teaching mathematical courses for little ones, so why? Why can we do that? Why in mathematics does this work, right? And it's incredible that even me, after I finished my master in mathematics, I didn't know the answer because I never studied logic and I didn't have a clue. Now that we know a little bit more about logics, we know the answer, right? Because in mathematics or in classical logic, we use something called the principle of the excluded middle. There is something is either valid or its negation is valid. And using this principle, you can prove that these three classical formulas are equivalent. That would be A implies B, not B implies not A and not B implies bottom, right? So this is why we can use all these three ways of proving something. So what happens if at some point we say, okay, I don't like the principle of the excluded middle, and I want to do proofs without using that. Well, if you do that, if you take this approach, then you cannot use contradiction or contraposition anymore. You have to give a direct proof, right? That means that proofs should be constructed somehow. And then, of course, you're not in classical logic anymore. You're in Intuitionistic logic. And Intuitionistic logic is really important because of lots of things. I'm not going to talk, about applications here, but first is the basis of functional programming languages. Also, you can see it as process calculi for concurrent systems and etc. So this is computational applications. And why it works is because you can see types as formulas, okay? So I take classical logic, I took off one thing, little, and the principle of the excluded middle, and then I have this other logic called Intuitionistic logic, and it's closely related to computation, right? Okay, so what else can I do? In how other way can I modify classical logic and obtain something other thing that is interesting somehow? So what I can do is to drop what is called the structure of rules in classical logic. So I'm not going to let someone to have the ability of copying formulas or removing them or exchanging orders, all of them, some of them. When we do that, what we get is something called substructure logics, and this is really important because in this kind of logics, often you can consume the formulas. So you can see formulas as resources. And this has lots and lots and lots of applications because you can use this kind of logics for talking about something that's known as state transitions, and for that you can model real things in life. Let's say, for example, a coffee machine that you put a coin and you take the coffee, right? You put the coin, you consume the coin, and then you take the coffee, you get the coffee, right? In classical logic, what do? You put the coin, you get the coffee, and you get your money back, right? Nice. So this is why when you take off this, this ability of copying things, and then what you're going to have is something more real, more computational, let's say. Well, there's some other ways to vary a logic as well, starting from classical logic always, is to vary the notion of truth. So instead of only true and false, and true is the same as not false, and not false, and false is the same as not true, we can have things like, for example, A is necessarily true, whatever it means. Okay, so when you decide to enhance the notion of truth, having other interpretations for that, then what we do normally is to put the modal. There is this kind of connective here that marks a formula. And when I put this modal here, I can read this formula, this modal formula, as something. So here I put the formula A is necessarily true, but it could be also like in epistemic logic, agent knows A, or something like this. Okay. Well, when you do that, so now you create another sort of logics. And then you can study all of them, and they have lots of implications that I'm going to talk about in 5 minutes. But one way, the most common way of doing that, of having this kind of modality, is to have this logic called K. I'm going to talk about what's K, so it's okay if you don't know K. And then you can extend K, because it's really weak, really basic, to putting modalities, or to put properties on your modalities, and then you can have what we call normal modal logics. Okay. So these extensions could deal with, for example, transitivity or reflexivity or whatever. I'm going to talk about this thing, so don't worry. And applications, of course. I mean, I don't have to talk to you about applications of that to philosophy. But, well, also in mathematics, there are lots of applications in computer science, and also, I mean, it's really enormous, the number of applications we have, only by putting this box in front of formula and interpreting them somehow. Okay, so this is beautiful, but what's the meaning of this thing? So, as I said in the beginning, I'm going to talk about syntax, and I'm going to talk about semantics as well. So I'm going to talk about meaning of doing all these things. So taking things off here, putting things on, what does it mean? So one really, really beautiful result, at least I think so, mathematically speaking, is that if you take both intuitionistic logic, remember intuitionistic logic is only classical logic without the principle of excluded middle, or normal modal logics that are extensions of K, both of them can be interpreted or seen inside a mathematical structure called cryptic frame. Okay, cryptic frame is really something really too simple. So it's a pair. You have this is a set. You're going to call the set of words, and this is a relation, binary relation of words that we often call it accessibility relation. And then you have this symbol here that is a relation between nodes of words and formulas. Okay, so I put a simple example here. So here you have 4 nodes, K0, K1, K2, and K3. They all are words. They all live here. I put these arrows here saying, okay, these are the relations. So K0 is related to both K1 and K2. And I didn't put this thing here, only not, to have you the picture. This is the validity. So here it means that Q is valid in the word K2, for example. Okay, so you can see frames of something like this, or more complicated than that. But well, just a simple one, just to start with. Well, and then there's the beautiful theorem. So I told my students that I do love theorems. So this is this is the how to say that. Well, the most amazing things about when you study something is when you can take one word and you can take another word. They don't seem to have anything to do with each other, and then you do a bridge between them. So this is a beautiful bridge. So for this kind of logics, intuitionistic logic and normal modal logics, we can have a result like this, that I can prove something in the syntactical part, or I can prove that a formula is derivable in my system if and only if I can prove that this formula is valid in my model. Okay? This is soundness and completeness theorems. They're really cute about this bunch of logics, and it establishes a bridge between proof theory and model theory. Proof theory has as mathematical objects proofs, and model theory has as mathematical objects structures, mathematical structures. Okay, so it's kind of cute. No, it's really cute. So let me concentrate a little bit on this part now. So this is all motivation. Okay, I didn't start my talk yet. So let me talk about this. What's this? What's proof theory? How do I, I have a formula. How do I prove that this formula is valid? So for that, often what people like me do is to get or construct a logical system. Okay, so in general, we have an alphabet that is symbols, a set of symbols, and then you have a grammar to say, okay, this symbol can combine with the other one, and then you're going to get another thing, and this is valid. You may have axioms, like saying that things that are true without, proving the need for proving them. And you may have inference rules that's going to say, okay, if I have this, then I can have that. And the theorem for us in logic or in mathematics, so it doesn't matter. It's a statement that we can prove within these logical systems using axioms and the inference rules. So I don't quite remember, Guilherme, when I first gave this this course in the philosophy department. You're there, the very first one, right? Yeah, so it was really amazing because it was my first contact to philosophy or philosophers or the philosophy department, whatever. And the way that I used it to do my things was completely different from the way that that Guilherme used it to do. So it was hard for me to understand the way they did, and it was hard for me to teach them the way I did the thing. So they look at me like if I came from Mars yesterday, like, why are you doing this? Why? I mean, it's okay. I mean, you go axiom, 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 and then you refer there, up, and then you go there, and then down axiom, and modal exponents, and that's it, right? I said, no, I mean, I cannot understand it, right? So this is the thing. So instead of, this is what proof theories do, what I do, for example. I take a description, that'll be axioms or the semantics or whatever, and then I transform this into systems, because I can only reason in systems. I'm not that smart. I continue to be not that smart for Hilbert-style kind of systems. So there are lots of reasons for doing that. One is you can mechanize the reasoning. The other thing is that you can prove properties of your own system. So as I said, you have a theory where the mathematical objects are proofs. So you want to reason about them, right? So you can do that if you have a proof system. And you can also go back and try to find a nice semantics for your theory. So I'm just going to give you one example. So if you take intuitionistic logic, again, I'm going to talk about intuitionistic logic over and over again today. And if you take this following Brouwer, Heiting, and Kolmogorov conditions, that'll be, if you have a proof of A, and if you have a proof of B, then you have a proof of A and B. Sounds like, okay. For A or B, it'll be what? If you have a proof of A, or if you have a proof of B, then you have a proof of A or B. Okay. How about implication? Well, I'm not going to talk about the philosophical interpretation of this. I'm just going to say, as is stated for B, HK. A implies B. How can you prove A implies B? Well, if you have a proof of A, and this leads to a proof of B, then you have a proof of A implies B. Okay? Okay, well, you cannot prove false. I mean, come on. And you can always prove something from itself, right? So how can we do inference rules from that? So take the first statement. you can do this like graphically like this. So this means if I can prove A from a set of hypothesis gamma, and if I can do the same with B from gamma, then I can prove A and B. You read to top to bottom, okay? If I prove A and I prove B, I prove A and B. This thing here is a meta symbol of consequence, and this thing here is a set or multi-set or a list or whatever formats, the hypothesis, okay? So you can do the same with OR, but now you have two choices, right? If you prove A, then you prove A or B. If you prove B, you prove A or B. So you have two rules. Implication. If from a proof of A, you have a proof of B, then you have a proof of A implies B, okay? So this is the way we go from these conditions to rules. Of course, this is the initial axiom that says that A is provable if I have A on my hypothesis. So I can use this for proving things. And of course, here I only had this R here means right, okay? So look that here I have this symbol of consequence, and here are the hypotheses, they stay on the left. And here is the conclusion, it stays on the right. So these are all rules acting on the right side of the sequence, okay? I can have rules for the left side as well. We have to use the inversion principle. I won't have time to talk about this. I mean, trust me, we can do that. So what can we prove with this set of rules and together with the left ones as well? We can prove things like this. We can prove that from A implies B, then not B implies not A. Oops. But this means what? This means contraposition? No. Just one side, okay? You can prove also one side of the implication being equivalent to not A or B. Just this one. You can prove one side of the modal spawning. Modal spawnings, you can prove one side of the double negation, but you cannot prove the other ones. So you cannot prove the opposite of this. You cannot prove the opposite of this. You cannot prove the opposite of this, nor the opposite of this. And of course, you cannot prove the principle of the exclusion. Okay? Okay, so intuitionistic logic is okay. The set of rules is easy to define and to handle. And if I want to be able to prove this, of course, I have to leave intuitionistic logic. I have to go to another logic. And then I have to change either my rules or my axioms or my formalism or I don't know, okay? So this is what I'm going to talk about. Proof systems, models, proof theory, and model theory. Only that. So let's start with intuitionistic logic again, okay? So these are the set of rules. These are the right rules that I put, the axiom that I also put. The left rules are these ones. I'm not going to enter into details or, analyze rule by rule. This is really boring to do in a presentation. So what I'm going to do is, okay, so this is cute. This is nice. I wanted to relate this to semantics somehow. And then this is the semantics for intuitionistic logic. So you take the crypt semantics for intuitionistic logic is something like this. So you say that P is valid in a word W if if W belongs to V of P. This is the validation function. I'm not going to talk about this. You can never force or validate bottom. You can validate A and B if you can validate A and you can validate B. The same with OR. Just put an OR here. And this is the implication. The implication is kind of strange, okay? The implication for intuitionistic logic is something like this. I can, A implies B is valid in the word W if and only if for all V words that are up to, with respect to W, if A is valid in this word that is up, then B is also valid there, okay? So this is the crypt semantics for implication for intuitionistic logic. It sounds complicated, right? It's not. So I'm going to say that A implies B if and only if every time that up there A is valid, then B is also valid, okay? So what the hell, right? How can I get a system from this, right? But there are lots of ways of doing that. I'm going to show you one. And I'm only going to take a look at the implication because this is what is important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this sentence from here to here. That is from right to left, right? So what's written here? So it's written that, right? If A is valid in V, and now I changed the notation a little bit just to look a little bit more formless. If A is valid in B, and from this I can derive that V is valid in V, and V is whatever, then it's valid that that A implies B is valid in W, okay? So this is the way we look using a rule, as the way we did before. So look, so here I have as a hypothesis that V is valid in, that A is valid in V. And if from this, and V is over W, and if from this I can prove that B is also valid in V, then A implies B is valid down there in W, okay? So this is the way I can take a semantics, a semantical specification, and construct rules using the semantics and inference rules, okay? Okay, so now it's the question, right? I mean, this is really beautiful. So first, I got this this one from the Brouwer, Harting, Kolmogorov criteria or conditions. I got this rule. Now, looking at the semantics, I got this rule. Gee, how can I relate them? I mean, it has A implies B. It has A and B, okay? But it has here you have W, you have V, you have blah. Okay? So how do you relate these things? Well, one way of doing that is using a semantical argument, proving soundness and completeness. Okay? So we can show that both systems are sound and complete. This system and this system are sound and complete with respect to the correct semantics. This is okay, but this is an indirect argument. Okay? Although this is really fine for a mathematician, and I really didn't pay attention to this kind of problem. I just started paying attention to that only, I don't know, a month ago or something. This has a philosophical kind of problem because you're treating constructive things using classical argumentation. Okay, so it's okay, but it's not okay. Okay. So finding a direct relation is important for bending this philosophical problem, but also to find a pattern. And I'm going to show you what do I mean by pattern. Okay. So I said that this is okay. I can do that in using contraposition argument. I would like to give to come from here to here like directly, and I would like to do that not only for intuitionistic logic but also to modal logics, normal modal logics, and some other logics. Okay. So let's start with modal logic. Let's start with K, the simplest one, let's say. Okay. So what you do for constructing K is that you add to classical logic to a rule and an axiom, the necessitation rule that says that if you can prove A from nothing, then you can prove box A, and the distribution, well, the axiom K that says that box can be distributed over implication. Okay, so this is K. How can you get from these two things, or this specification here, how can you get a rule? It's easy. So what you do is you start from A implies B, then you have the rule of implication, right? You can pass this A to the right side, so you have A implies B here. Then you can use necessitation. So if A implies B is a theorem, I can put a box in front of it, so this is necessitation. But then if I have a box and I have implication here, this axiom here says that I can pass the box inside. And this formula, this implication on the right, is the same thing as this thing here, both syntactically and semantically. Okay, so I can pass this box here. Okay, so if from A I can prove B, and then from box A I can prove box B. This is the rule. Okay, only that. Of course, I can do that in a general way. So if I can prove A from a set of hypotheses, then I can prove box A from the set of hypotheses, but only with the box on the front, okay? Well, okay, so this is one way to do. And if you do that, you get this system. It's the classical logic plus the row K. But of course, you can do the same as we did before. So I can have the semantics, the crypt semantics, and I can try to derive the rules, okay? This is a little bit more complicated. So the cryptic semantics for K is this one. So just note that now I have a classical implication. So the classical implication doesn't have this for all, blah, 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 blah. It's simple. So A implies B in W if and only if A is valid in W and B is also valid in W. Oh, sorry. If from A valid in W implies that B is also valid in W. And what's different? The different thing now is the box, right? So W forces or box A is valid in the word W if and only if for all V that's related to W, A is valid there. So what do I do when I move here from here to here? I'm going to exchange W for a V as long as V is related to W, and I'm going to move A to that word, the new word, okay, without the box. I take off the box. So how can you get a system or a rule or a set of rules actually from this? Well, you have to read this from here to here and then from here to here. From here to here is just the same as we did before. So I have a for all here and I have this thing here. So if A is valid in V, then V is related to W, and then box A is going to be valid in W, okay? So it's easy. So what's not easy is to understand what happens if I go from here to here, okay? I'm not going to, give all the details. So when we read from the left to right, we're going also to flip. We're going to flip left to right, but we're going to flip also top with bottom, okay? So the way I read from left to right is like this. If knowing that A is valid in V, I can prove delta, whatever is delta, then box A being valid in W also entails delta, if and only if V is related to W, okay? So you flip things in the two ways. So I'm going from left to right, and I'm going, so here I'm going from here to here. This implies this, but this is going to be on the top, and this is going to be on the bottom because I'm on the left, okay? So this is, there is a strategy for doing that. This is automatically, so I'm not going to enter into details of this thing. It's just to show that from this if and only if, I can have these two rules here for box, okay? So the question is the same. How can I relate the system? So before I had the system here with this rule K, that is easy to understand. I just put boxes here. And now I have these two rules here. Here, box on the right. Here, box on the left. Here I have words being related, but something just appear on the top. Some things appear everywhere. So how do I relate these things at all? Okay. So there are lots of, or at least two ways of doing that. One would be, again, to prove that probability in each of these systems is the same as validity in the crypt semantics. And this is okay now because we are classical logic, doing classical reasoning, so it's okay. But what's the pattern that I said, that I had a pattern about this thing? So this is the thing I'm going to show you. So how can I relate this with this, and also the case for intuitionistic logic in the same way, in the same package? So for that, what I'm going to do, or to show, is how to extend sequence systems, okay? Well, so first of all, when you're going to design a calc-life or proof system, it's the same thing for logic, you want some things. So for example, you want that you have different left and right rules. So I told you at the beginning, so we have box left, we have box right, we have implication left, we have implication right. Also, You don't want to look at the context because, you know, if you have to check something on the context for applying a rule, then this is complicated. And you want to extend these things in a very easy way. So if you take, for example, K and 4 that is going to appear later, so don't worry if you don't know this thing or don't understand this thing. So if you take K, it doesn't have separation, it doesn't have locality, and it doesn't have modularity. It doesn't have any of that, okay? So this is a nice rule because it works, but it's a bad rule because you cannot see what's happening. And when I say what's happening, it's really semantically. You cannot take the semantics out of this rule here. So what we do is to extend the sequence structure. So I'm going to show you briefly how you do that. Really, I think that my talk is going to take 45 minutes at most. So at the beginning, they put 1 hour and a half for me to talk. And I said, no, I cannot talk for any. Of course, I can talk for an hour and a half. If I'm, you know, in a bar drinking some beer and talk about, I don't know. But talking about research, I mean, come on. I mean, you should be able to say things in 1 hour, right? And well, my little kids, I mean, they already had one class with me. They're going to have another one tomorrow. So come on, it's like it's too much. So I'm going to make it short with nice kind of drawings so we can understand what we're going to do. Okay? So here I have this thing here that is the inference symbol. So from something above, I'm going to prove something below. Before this something above and something below that we had was something that we called a sequent here and a sequent here. Okay? Now I'm going to change a little bit the thing. Instead of a sequence, I'm going to have a tree of sequence. And here, a tree of sequence as well. Okay? So you remember graphs, right? More or less. A tree is a graph that doesn't have cycles, right? Yeah, okay, yeah. So, so you have nodes, and you have gee, forgot the name. Edges, thank you. You have edges, and you have the nodes, and this is the thing. So it's a tree, filled with a sequence all over, and you know, some nodes, some edges, just relating them. So it's like a mess. Okay. So how we're going to tame this mess? We're going to do something like this. If I have a box on the right, somewhere in the middle, it doesn't matter where in my tree. What I'm going to do is reading bottom up, okay? Of course, then we can read top down, but reading bottom up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create another child. So I'm going to put another edge, and I'm going to move the A there alone, okay? This is on the right. On the left is something like this. If I have a tree, in the middle of my tree, I have a node where this node already has a child, and I have a box here on the left. What I'm going to do is to move the formula up, okay? So, again, so on the right, I create a child and move the formula there. On the left, I had already to have a child, and I move the formula over there, okay? Okay, this is cute, but you know, if I had to draw, to do these drawings, the whole presentation from now on, I mean, it's going to be impossible, right? So I'm going to choose the notation a little bit like this, okay? So now it's easier to understand. So see, here I had a box on the right, and now what I do is I create another child, and for child I'm going to put into brackets, is that in English? Brackets, and move the A there, okay? Here, if I have a box on the left, and now I already have a child or something between brackets, I move the A there, okay? So this is, now it's easier to read, okay? Okay, so when we do that, now it's easy to prove that these two rules here are equivalent to this one. Why? Because if you want to apply this rule, starting bottom up again, if I have a box on the right, and I have a box, this is the same as this. So I have a box on the right, what I do, I move up. I create a child, and I move up the A there. And then now I have lots of boxes on the left. What can I do? I already have a child. I move the boxes there, okay? So proving box A from box gamma, having it as premises or having something that I know that is already provable, that A comes or follows from gamma, is the same here. So if I can prove this, that is inside here, I can prove this thing, okay? So in this way, now we know how to pass from here to here. Just changing the formalism. Now let's do the labels, the label thing. So let's do the cryptic semantics kind of thing. So what I showed to you right now was this. So I have a box on the right. I create a child, and I put this in rows, magenta. And I move the A here. And on the left, if I already have a child, I move the formula there, okay? So labels. Labels, the label rules that we had was something like this. If I have that W, that box A is valid on W, then I can move up with A being valid on V and create this relation between V and W. So they're the same thing. So see, so here that I have in blue is I'm here. I'm in W, whatever it means, W, but I'm there, okay? I'm moving up. When I move up, I'm not in W anymore. I'm creating something new, and I'm putting my A there. So it's the same thing. So I just, instead of putting brackets, I'm labeling my formulas, okay? Here is the same thing as well. So see, so I have this thing here. It looks complicated. It's not. So I have box A on the left. I have child here and here. And I'm going to move this up. So I'm going to put this thing here, but on the left. So I just move here to pink again, okay? So they're the same. Just moving the formalism, I got that they are the same. So that's it, voila. And now I can relate that question that I did in the beginning. How can I relate this with this? It's simple. You move A first, and then you move one by one the formulas that are here, and then you get this thing, okay? So now I have a very nice way of talking about syntactics and semantics directly. I don't have to do anything directly. And of course, I said that there is a pattern, so I have to show it. The same, you can do the same with intuitionistic logic. With intuitionistic logic, the thing that behaves like the box is the implication. So when I move up, I'm going to create a child, put the formulas there. And if a formula is on the left and I already have a child, I just put the formula there, okay? It's the same thing, again. And the thing is that in intuitionistic logic, the crypt semantics is, the relation is given by less or equal. So in less or equal, you have something that is called monotonicity, right? Transitivity, that if A is valid in W and V is greater than W, then and A is valid there as well. So this is I mean, to take this thing and then transform this to a rule gives me the same rule I had here, only with labels. And here's the formula, the rule that I had before with labels. So now we can see that this is the same as this, because this is the same as this is the same as this is the same as this, and I'm just creating a label, I'm creating an estimate, okay? So they're the same thing. Well, modular, okay, I could do for intuitionistic logic and for K, right? What other logics? For example, normal modal logics. So I'll just put three of them here. I could do with more than them, but you know, just put these axioms here that I can add to my system. I can add D, I can add T, I can add 4, and I'm going to have a system that is a modal system that is how can I say, more powerful somehow. Okay. It happens that when I put this axioms here in the system, in the logical system, in the syntax, what I do in the semantic counterpart is to add these things here. So for D, what I have to add is that it's always the case that I have someone related to a word for every word or any word that I take. Adding T, adding this axiom there in the proof system is the same as adding to my frame model reflexivity. That is, my relation should be reflexive as well. And adding 4 is the same as adding transitivity. Okay. So in this way, I can do the same. I was doing before. So for example, I can have the rule D, the sequent calculus rule for D, that it corresponds to this axiom. How? The way that I showed before. You can take the axiom and do tricks, and then you get to this. And this is going to correspond to this. So what I do here, look, I have box, box. I go up, and I take off this box, and I take off this box, and I erase everything else. So it's the same here. So up, what I do, I create another nesting. I put the A there on the left, and I just forget about the rest. T, well, it's the same as in sequent calculus or nesting. Is the same rule. If I have box, then I can replicate without the box. Reading bottom up always. And 4 is the same as, it's close to K. The only difference is that bottom up, what I do is I take off the box here and I maintain the box here on the left. So also it's easy. Instead of passing only A, you pass box A, right? So this means modularity. So everything that I did before, I can continue doing that in sequent calculus, in nested sequence, and in label systems. So I take all this. In the label, what I do is to take all this specification, this semantical specification, and I put them as rules. This one is easier to see, I think. It means that if U is related to V and V is related to W, then U is related to W. You're going to say, oh, but you know, it's bottom up. No, it's like this, but remember that I'm on the left, so I have to flip everything, okay? So in this way, I have a way of talking about intuitionistic logics, K, normal model logics. Fine. What else can I do? I can do, instead of having, why just have one model? I can have as many as I want, right? So you can mix these things. So what you do is you create, you define a general notion of frame. For what? For multimodality. So instead of having one box, I may have as many as I want. And I combine them using what we call interaction axioms. And then, of course, you prove that the modal logic that you have doing this thing corresponds to the specification and the extension of cryptic models. Okay, so you have soundness and completeness for this new logics, infinite many of them, and the notion of frames for all of them. I'm not going to explain that to you, don't worry. So just to say that if I take my axioms for this kind of, infinite number of logics and try to do the sequence rules, what I'm going to get is this. Okay, a little bit complicated. So let's leave it. Or I can have nestings. It's easier a little bit. So we already know these things more or less. The only difference is that now when I create a child, I put a label here on the child. So it means that A is inside the box I. Okay? And I have the other rules more or less the same as before. And of course, I can have label rules. So I can label everything. And I can relate sequence with nested, with labels. And this is one-to-one, 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 and it's direct. I don't use contraposition. I don't use nothing. Just direct proofs. So, more or less, this is what I wanted to talk about, okay? I would have more things to say on that. I'm going to do that in the conclusion, so I'm just going to briefly enumerate for you what else can we do. So in this talk, what we did was to prove that when you take normal model logics and intuitionistic logic, you can interpret that in structures. But when I say interpret, is directly. Okay, you do that without giving indirect arguments. In this way, what we did was to establish relations between syntax and semantics of existing systems. There is a note here. It's not difficult to extend this to a broader class of logics. Actually, here we showed how to to do that for normal multimodal logics. And this was done in a direct and natural kind of way. And the thing is that when we have this nestings and everything and labels and blah, blah, this can be extended in a very modular way. So what I did was really nothing difficult. I mean, I took something, I put a little bit more, and I said, ooh, it works. And then I put something, ooh, it works. And it works the same way. And then you go like this, okay? What else can we do? So actually, we can do lots of other things using this approach. First of all, when I got to Natal, I also had to teach a course. It was not on philosophy, but you know, I had people from philosophy attending my classes. And the other professor was João Marcos, and he's fascinated about tableaus. And I was like, tableau, I always hated tableaus. Now, I must confess to you, I mean, tableau is the same thing as nested sequence, sequence calculus. So it's the same. So I cannot, you know, hate one and love the other. I mean, come on. So this was good for me to, you know, to say, okay, Elaine, you're completely wrong. Okay, so there is a way, a very beautiful way of relating everything I said today to prefixed tableau. Fitting did something in this direction. I enhanced his work on that, also for other logics than intuitionistic logic. The other thing that we've been doing is to work with non-normal modalities. They are kind of strange. That's why I didn't talk about them today. So it's, you can take this. I love this picture. Because, you know, when you teach mathematics or geometry, basic geometry to little kids, you have, you know, cube, right? But here, learning non-normal modalities, I got over this thing that is a tesseract or a hypercube or whatever, right? Tesseract is something from Star Trek, some other thing that I'm fascinated about, other than Gallo. And yeah, so we can handle all these modalities here. So yes, so today I talked about D, 4, K, what else? I talked about T as well, right? Yeah, but this is a little, like a little fragment, okay? You can have other extensions of K or not. They are here, the non-extensions of K, and extensions of these non-extensions of K, and then, okay? So you have lots of other modalities. You can do the same as I did today for the syntactical part, for all these modalities. And also, we can do these things over logics that are not classical or intuitionistic. Of course, when I do that, when I say that we can do that, it's only the syntactical part. The semantical part is still ongoing work. Well, this was good for us to extend some notions that are there like forever. Sub-exponentials, nestings, blah, 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 to a bunch of logics. And the conclusion is that our approach is really, really modular, okay? We don't know the limit. So every day we step into another system and another system, and I try to do the thing, and I can do the thing. I know some that I cannot handle. For example, that it's not here, 5. I cannot handle 5. What's missing? So non-normal modal logics, the semantics, they don't have a beautiful, cute, little semantics like cryptic models, okay? They don't have a general uniform way of talking about interpreting the logics. So it's complicated. So for example, some of them have neighbor kind of semantics that Georgia studies, and some of them we don't know, and whatever. So it's complicated. That will be case by case. We have to analyze what we can do through semantics of these things, blah, blah, blah. Well, the same with substructural logics. Something that's not interesting for philosophers in general is that all the things that I talked about has a computational. I talked about mathematics and mathematics. So I talked about models and proofs, right? But I could also talk about computer science, okay? So everything that I said has a computational meaning. Some of them we do know, some we don't know, so book. And the other thing is that I think it's really easy to extend these things to paraconsistent systems. So actually what I'm doing is to take João Marcos' system, the one that he proposed last year, I think, It has a very nice script kind of structure, and I'm doing the same with his system. I didn't have time to finish, but I think it's not going to be hard. Okay? That's it. Thank you.